And good evening. It's July 18th, 2024. Welcome to another one of our branches on the vine with the Bible Project and the Sermon on the Mount series. So the Bible Project, they created this series to cover an entire year. Every 5 weeks they're going to release another episode. And we're going to take some time to discuss each of these videos and some other creative topics that they present along the way. But the videos that we're going to be discussing, they're just the tip of the iceberg. They are part of our learning series that I highly recommend. They can all be found on the Bible Project app. Link to that, of course, is in the description. So welcome this evening to episode 6 of Sermon on the Mount, Don't Give, Fast, or Pray in Public. This is our part 2 on the Dusty Feet. And of course, before we forget, if you find these kinds of podcasts useful, it's when you click the subscribe button. The reminders, they just help you. But also, if you think these might be useful to others, it's when you click that like button, because that is the way that YouTube chooses to share these to more people, if they wish. So this sermon, again, is found in Matthew 5 through 7, and for me, it's the seminal moments in the teachings of Jesus. Because this is his longest, deepest, widest teaching that we have recorded in all of Scripture. And it covers things that we for sure, we'd like to talk about. But deep down, I think we really have challenges living. Sermon on the Mount, Episode 6, Don't Give, Pray, or Fast in Public. This is our part 2 of 4. So, let's watch the video again, see where it takes us. Enjoy.
Jesus of Nazareth, one of the most influential people in history, taught that the truly good life flows out of a close, intimate relationship with the creator of the universe.
Yeah, Jesus believed this was the ultimate treasure of human existence, receiving God's love. And Jesus said, doing righteousness is our response by giving that love back out to others.
Now, Jesus also lived in a culture where showing your devotion to God publicly will increase your reputation. So, it would be easy to turn your intimacy with God into a performance to get public praise.
Exactly. And so, in a group of his teachings called the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus warns his followers about that temptation.
Be careful that you don't do your righteousness in front of people for the purpose of being seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in the skies. So, acting like you're close with God might gain you social status or applause.
But, Jesus says, that's really all you're going to get. Jesus describes this performance as being a hypocrite, which comes from the Greek word hypokrites, which refers to a stage actor putting on a show.
So, how can I know if I'm becoming a hypocrite? That seems like an easy trap.
Yeah, it's super easy. And so Jesus offers 3 case studies. He uses the 3 most common ways in his day that Jewish people expressed their devotion to God, beginning with generosity.
So then, when you give generously to those in need, don't signal it with a trumpet, as the hypocrites do in the town squares or streets. They do that to be honored by people. And I tell you the truth, they have fully received their reward.
So, in Jesus' culture, public displays of generosity were a way to celebrate God's generous love. But they could also become a way to promote yourself.
So Jesus offers an alternative. When you give generously to those in need, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving is done privately. And your Father who sees what is done in private, he will fully reward you.
So, one foolproof way to make sure your generosity is really done out of love is to do it in ways other people can't see.
But didn't Jesus also teach to let your light and good deeds shine as an example for others?
Well, yes. When you consider all of Jesus' teachings on generosity, we see he regularly called his followers to give generously because it displays the heartbeat of God's love. But be careful and self-critical, he says. If there's even a hint of inner hypocrisy, it's probably wise to do your giving in private.
It would be easier if Jesus just gave one clear rule.
Maybe, but what he's given us is wisdom. And that forces us to cultivate a closer relationship with God, trusting that he'll show us when to give in private or more publicly. He makes the same point in his second case study about prayer.
And when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray while standing where people gather or on street corners so that they can be seen by people. I tell you the truth, they have fully received their reward.
In Jesus' culture, most Jewish people stopped whatever they were doing multiple times a day, and they prayed a traditional prayer from the Torah called the Shema. Jesus himself was known for his consistent devotion to prayer. But be careful, he says, because even your prayer habits can become a strategy for public praise.
Right, I can imagine the temptation to conveniently find yourself on a busy street corner when prayer time comes. I mean, people will think I'm really devout.
And if that's what you're after, congratulations. You will probably get people's admiration, but that's all. So Jesus suggests a different way.
But when you pray, go into a room, shut the door, so you can pray to your Father in private. And your Father, who can see what's done in private, he will reward you.
Prayer is about spending time with God, sharing your thoughts and concerns, and trusting that he will hear and respond. The easiest way to check your motives for praying is to do it when no one can see. But again, this is not a rule, it's wisdom. Jesus prayed alone and also together with his followers. Both are important ways of connecting to God.
The third example Jesus gives is about fasting. When you all fast, don't look gloomy like the hypocrites. They make their faces look disfigured, so their fasting will be seen by others. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward.
So fasting is a way of praying with your body by withholding your own physical needs like food and drink, and then inviting God's presence to meet you in that place of need.
But even fasting can be used as a performance.
Yes, so be careful, like Jesus says.
But when you fast, anoint your head with oil, wash your face, so your fasting isn't visible to anyone except your Father in private, and he will reward you.
Now, notice that in all three cases, Jesus does not say to ditch these practices.
Right, express your devotion, but find creative ways to do it so that you don't treat God's love like a trophy.
Jesus knows that his followers will be most effective in the world when they care the least about their social standing, because their ultimate goal is simply to know and be known by the God of generous love.
We just looked at 3 warnings for those committed to a relationship with God. And one of those was about prayer.
Next, we'll look at the very center of the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus teaches his followers how to pray.
So, what you think? So one of the things that I like about the Bible Project videos as a whole is that they're a launching point. They get the ball rolling, right? Very seldom is there an entire teaching there, meaning the entire point is made. It's but the beginning of a much larger discussion, yeah? So again, I suggest that you take advantage of their app. They have tie-ins with other videos, visual commentary, and of course their podcasts with a lengthier discussion. But these from the Sermon on the Mount, tip of the iceberg. So let's look underwater, see what we might find. So one of the phrases John actually uses is just be careful. Don't do your righteousness in front of people. Doing the right thing by God and by people and just in front of others. You know, that's an interesting balance, to be honest, because doing what is right, that's more of a verb-like phrase to righteousness, right? It's important in God's economy. And maybe that's why hypocrite is an appropriate word here. Might even be a convincing performance, at least by our accounts. But God, He's the one who decides. But with this view of hypocrite, the mirror is on ourselves. It's not on others. It's our performance that God is watching. So one of the main points of being an actor, and for me, and I loved the stage as a kid, I was in the drama club. Go figure. But the point was, I could leave the role behind after I left the stage. I could be someone for a time, then I could leave it behind. But with God, there's no difference. And by that I mean, like in life, wherever we are that role. We are a servant of His, a representative of His. There are no days off. There's no break from that film shoot. No being a preacher, teacher, or fill in the blank thing. And then life, it's just different. It's not an act. It's a heart lifestyle. So there's an interesting point that Tim makes. It's that Jesus brings up in these 3 case studies that those Jewish believers did this in their day. Albeit true. However, I'm also compelled that it's the same exact thing that we do here, today, in our time. Might have a little different look, a different nuance. But we can talk about what is seen today, and then maybe how that fits into these 3 case studies. I won't even get started on social media, where all is seen, whether we like it or not. But again, it could probably be a bit uncomfortable talking about it. And this is just merely for the discussion's sake. I'm not here to point out what I think is a right or wrong thing. It just gives us something to ponder when it goes back to how we might be displaying this. And the one thing that I did like to remember in their animations, and I think the Bible Project did a spot-on job with this realm, between the real world with the real world characters when they're angular and lifelike. But as we get into the heart mode, that's what's going on underneath, right? What are the motivations, the unseen, right? They're in that soft, neon, rounded look. I like that look. I like the feel of this realm. So let's get down to it. Giving generously, yet giving out so others can see it. Now, maybe we can see some points to ponder. So, we have a lot of foundations, groups, things that we donate to for the betterment of our fellow humankind in general. I believe the vast majority of them, I think they're good. I believe that the vast majority of them benefit those that are targeted. So I'm not here to debate people who are more nefarious in this, right? That they take from the top or the corporate stuff. Because what we're talking about, and Jesus is addressing, are those that are the givers. It's their hearts. So is recognition part of the motivation? Here's a thought. Might be uncomfortable. So here's an example. I'll put a heart thought to the test. Then maybe we can name something after say we name a donation after somebody. Yeah. It's not uncommon in many hospitals to have a wing or a ward or a garden or a bench after somebody to dedicate it to somebody's memory. Okay, so it makes us think, is this the purpose for recognition or is the purpose just for status? Maybe the purpose is just for memory, that this person was important to them, that they wanted their life remembered in this life. So I do agree there's a difference between status and remembrance. And this is one of those interesting things that only God can glean, because only He can see the heart issue underneath. That man behind the mask, you saw that in the video, yeah? We donate money, dedicate that to someone, or even to ourselves. Seen plenty of that. Issue is we're not the judge. It's never our responsibility. Yet it is our mirror to look into. Are we masking something else? Or are we genuine? Remember, those folks in these case studies that Jesus is talking about, how did they view themselves? Can it be done to benefit without the sake of any recognition at all? It's an interesting thing to talk about amongst ourselves, right? Because it does bring up the remembrance and legacy versus the need to do this to be seen, right? Or even remembered, or even a tax break. But again, why do we do what we do? Why are we generous? To whom are we generous? And so Jesus draws us a picture. Of course, not literally, but with a metaphorical picture, one hand in the other, right? Some very simple, practical wisdom advice. Don't let one hand know what the other's doing. Being recognized is so far from the thought that one hand doesn't even realize what is happening. Okay, so now when you think about it, that's actually a bit more extreme than it sounds. Because it seems knowing is not even part of it. And I suspect that we're going to visit this thought a bit with folks not knowing down the road. So giving, and generously, it's part of the thought. And freely, we get a thought later about even with a cheerful heart. So I have an interesting thought about giving and a thought about compelling others. Because we are addressed here about our heart and giving. It's our heart on display to God. No mask is going to work. So this is an interesting thought to me. Bob Wern on the Dusty Feet. This is one of those challenging parts of passing the plate in church. Yeah, I went there. Sorry. But I had to pass the plate, so you pass the plate. I've been to a number of places where the plates, they're made different. I mean, some from wood, a bag with handles, and of course metal, just with like felt at the bottom. You know, this is a double-edged sword, being compelled to give and seeing those who give and don't give. Change, bills, checks, envelopes. But is there a notion of being compelled to give, the peer pressure to be part of the group? Does this thought even belong in this discussion? And yet, inadvertently, do we cause this to be an issue or a concern? What's our motivation for the practice, the tradition, right? Why? Because mirrors can be scary. We are part of this, like it or not. And are we willing to look at how this fits amongst, with the one hand, maybe not knowing what the other's doing? Because do I accidentally, unintentionally, hopefully, appear to put any pressure on someone to do it, to give? Because like Tim and John talked about, one of the points was, yes, Jesus does say, God does say, give generously, cheerfully, for the benefit of everybody, for the benefit of the multitude, for the benefit of the community. So Jesus is talking about pondering the practice and how we do it. So whether we're physically helping somebody or whether we're financially helping somebody, meaning I may give to an organization in another place on the planet. Shape of choice follows. And at the end of the day, hopefully, will be a benefit. I mean, funds, they can buy food, water, merchandise, labor, digging wells, building structures, even teachers. The practice can look different today. Maybe not as different as we might think, but still a little different. But it just brings up a lot of other questions that might rumble around that were probably left better for another time. But I think it's still worthy to talk amongst yourselves. So remember, in the description below is a link to the folks at the Bible Project and a link to the app, so you can follow along and see each one as they premiere, and all those wonderful additional topics that they discuss, because this will continue to be an exciting and thought-provoking journey in the Sermon on the Mount. I wonder what we'll continue to uncover. So, thanks for with us tonight with the Sermon on the Mount on another edition of The Dusty Feet.